Now I'm recording. Okay, so today's notes are actually on 3 sections of the notes. So the very beginning is 510. Why don't you write that in the left column? We're going to start with 510. Towards the bottom, it says, let me see. Civil service. Where it says civil service towards the bottom, that's where it becomes 511. Flip it over. Where it says influences on behavior, that's where it becomes 512. And I'm telling you this because the study guide is broken up section by section, so it kind of might help you find some of the answers. Oh, I forgot. Tristan and Shauna, I have some passes. They just say, please come to the Career Center during office hours today so I can help you with your FAFSA. So do with that what you will. Okay, you're forever saved on this video. Kids in 12 years will watch this and say, Tristan, I wonder who that is. Okay. You ever hear me talk about kids' names on the videos that I made years ago? Like some random kid that's forever enshrined? Okay. So we begin with really the definition of bureaucracy, and it's the first blanks on your paper. The bureaucracy is everything but the president that's in the executive branch. It's all the agencies, all the departments, all the commissions within the executive branch. What is it about, what makes someone a bureaucrat? I think I might have asked this question the other day. The difference between Trump and a bureaucrat is that Trump was blank and they were not. What is it? Elected. Very good. I don't know. Maybe I've gotten better at teaching it, but I think this is like one of the harder things that we do and to understand. And so perhaps this is maybe the hardest unit, and perhaps this is maybe the hardest lecture. So just really lock in and pay attention, okay? How many departments do we have in the government? 15, very good. Now below departments on the triangle, what's below departments? So cabinet is a synonym for departments. So what's on the bottom of the pyramid? Federal agencies, okay? And we're going to talk about those. So you filled out that paper the other day, like NASA and the Postal Service and stuff. Those are agencies. When we filled out that paper, I told you not to mess with that one column because you didn't have the knowledge to answer the question. In like 7 minutes, you're going to have the knowledge to answer that, and we're going to pause the recording, and I'm going to let you fill that in, okay? So there are 3 types of federal agencies, 3 different types, like 3 different buckets you can place them into. Let's look at bucket number 1. Okay, bucket number 1. Independent executive agencies. And it just means they kind of do their own thing, and they are almost like a cabinet department where they have like a leader and that their structure is set up. So like NASA, they're just kind of doing their own thing. Small Business Association, National Science Foundation. You might say, well, I don't get it. That's not very descriptive, Mr. Robinson. Okay, but the next 2 will help you understand. This one's just kind of like the default, and then we go into the next 2. So the next one is called, bucket number 2, is called an Independent Regulatory Commission. And what I mean by that, like the key word there is regulatory. And by the way, can you circle independent executive agencies? Really make it stand out on your paper because you're going to need to find those words. And then can you circle Independent Regulatory Commission? Because that's bucket number 2. And the key word is regulatory. So while you circle, maybe underline or highlight regulatory, what these agencies do is they're regulating something. And the word regulate means controlling, protecting. So like you, as a 17, 18-year-old, you're still kind of regulated by your parents. They're controlling you a little bit. They're protecting you a little bit. All right? So when we look at the agencies and we say the post office, they're not regulating anything. We say NASA, they're not regulating anything. But when we look at food and drug, food and drug is being regulated. The government is like protecting us from the dangers of like ingesting something that could hurt us. I'm going to skip this, even though it's the next thing on our notes. I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to skip this. I'm going to skip this. Let me give you some examples of regulatory agencies. The Federal Reserve Board is regulating the banks and interest rates. Make sure you know what the word regulate means. Control, protect. Maybe write that. Regulation equals control, protect. Number 2, the Federal Communications Commission. They're regulating all the forms of communication: internet, radio, television, cell phone signals, Wi-Fi. The Federal Election Commission is regulating elections. That's one we haven't heard of. It wasn't on my paper. The National Labor Relations Board is regulating labor, making sure that workers are being treated fairly. The Security and Exchange Commission is regulating the stock market. The Federal Trade Commission is regulating businesses to make sure that they're not forming monopolies. I'm gonna give you some whiteboard notes that will assist you with the slide that we've skipped that I'm gonna go back to, okay? So these departments right here, we consider them quite, I mean, and this is not the full list, but this is some of the regulatory ones. We consider them quite important, and we wouldn't want a president to come in and just replace all the people all at once. It would be too much chaos, and so we take the leaders of this and we say, you have like a 10-year term, you have a 12-year term. That means that if Trump becomes president and he wants to like change all of these 6 leaders, he can't really do that because they have a longer, I mean, he might change some of them because the terms are staggered. They don't all end in one presidency. Is that kind of like how the Senate is not all elected in one election? So I'm going to give you a visual, and I'm doing it here because I'm recording here. I know it's not the best spot for you guys in the room, but hopefully you can kind of make sense of it. So imagine this line represents a 10-year time period. And if you like to write down stuff that the teacher puts on the board, you have the ability to do this. There's an open couple inches. This is up to you. So imagine this is like a 10-year time period. And let's imagine that there are some presidencies here. Let's say this is Obama. And this is Trump. And this is Biden. And my year thing is not very accurate, so. And then this is Trump again. So let's say I want to name a director of the Security and Exchange of the stock market. Well, maybe Trump can't do it because Obama did it here. He named a Security and Exchange leader, the SEC. Let's say Trump right here, he named a post office leader. He actually did name the leader of the post office. So this leader of the post office, he's going to serve, see my line, he's going to serve like a 10-year term. And so that means that, can Biden name a leader of the post office? He cannot, okay? You need to understand why this is the case, and the answer is we don't want a president to have like so much power and have the government be so shaken up and have so much chaos, sort of. And so we also, another reason is we don't want these departments to be like Democrat and Republican. They're trying to protect our food. They're trying to protect the stock market. They're trying to protect interest rates. For instance, if you're a president, do you want high interest rates or low interest rates? Low. But are low interest rates always good for the country? No. Do we sometimes have to make unpopular decisions? Yes. Do you want somebody who was elected to be in charge of, you know what I mean? Like there's a conflict of interest. Trump wants low rates. The country needs high rates. And so it's good that we have these 10-year terms so that we can't just have somebody go in there and like do everything the way they want to do it. We more like need the country to be run the right way. Now I'm going to go to the slide that explained everything I just said, but on your notes, okay? So generally, the decisions of these commissions are beyond presidential control. But the leaders are chosen by the president with Senate voting yes. And they serve all kinds of weird terms from 5 years to 14 years. I use 10 as an example on the board, but sometimes it's longer, or sometimes it's less. And then look at number 4, commissioners can be fired by the president, but only if the president has a good reason to fire them. I'll give you an example. This is what makes teaching AP Gov hard. And actually, I just shared something on my Instagram story this morning that's like, this is going to be the hardest, this time in America is going to be the hardest section on someone's AP Gov test in 10 years or whatever. But Barack Obama, he appointed a leader of the FBI, okay? And that leader was to have a 10-year term. Well, he was actually, the guy he appointed was Republican. So Obama, a Democrat, picked a Republican. That seems pretty fair, pretty nice. While Trump was president, though, this leader of the FBI, he was investigating Trump because there was like some, just without getting into it, there was some weird stuff going on, like connections to Russia or whatever. He was investigating Trump, and Trump fired him. Trump fired him here. That was one of the arguments for impeaching Trump, was that he fired somebody without like a good cause to do so. So I don't know. Do you understand like the checks and balances of why that these people have long terms and the president can't just replace them all? That's kind of the point of everything that I'm trying to say. But at the end of the day, Trump was not impeached, and he did fire the guy, and that's what happened. Okay. Now we change topics to like a new topic, but still very important, and that is these agencies and the powers that they have, okay? These agencies have quasi-legislative and, next slide will say, quasi-judicial powers. Quasi means like kinda. And we're back on our notes, like you gotta write this in. So, imagine that we wanna like protect people flying in airplanes, right? So in the transportation department, or like I think there's something called the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. So they set laws for like safe travel in airplanes. Here's what I'm trying to get at. The FAA decides, hey, everyone needs to take their shoes off before they get on a plane. We need to go through x-ray machines. We need to like, I've had this done. Have you had this done? They'll pull you aside and swab your fingers for bomb residue. You ever had that happen? Raise your hand if you ever had that happen. Am I the only one? Do I look like a terrorist? I don't know. But we're going to do all these things to keep people safe on planes. We're going to make sure every plane has this type of equipment installed. Here's the point. None of those ideas were laws that were passed by Congress. They were laws, saying laws is wrong, they were rules that were made by some agency about airplanes. So these agencies have the power to make rules that have the force of law. And it has made the executive branch stronger. In fact, I'm going to do something super weird right now. And I'm going to go to our summary. Okay? And I changed the summary question. So I want you to go to your summary right now. And you don't have to rewrite the question, but the new question is more like, explain how the bureaucracy has grown over time due to Congress. And I'm going to guide you through like a long-winded answer, and you're going to make it shorter. So you ready? How about just like listen for a minute, and then I'll tell you to write. And this is like FRQ, like bing, 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 like that's why I'm taking the time to really hold your hand through it. It's really up to Congress in this country to solve our problems. But they are 535 people, and they're too disjointed, and they could never be like passing, oh, take off your shoes at the airport. Oh, let's go through x-ray machine. Oh, planes should have this type of technology. That's too much. So what they do is when planes started to be invented and people were traveling in the 50s, 60s, 70s, they created the Federal Aviation Administration, and they said, you make the rules. And in fact, hire all the experts about planes. Hire all the experts about terrorism and people that might blow up a plane and technology. I want you to make the Federal Aviation Administration, we're going to put it in the executive branch, it will be there forever, and they can pass rules to make sure we're safe on airplanes. Congress has made the president more powerful over time by just always saying, we'll put it on his plate, we'll put it on the president's plate, we'll put it on her plate. And the result has been the executive branch power has grown, but these agencies have the power of making rules that have the force of law. So not all these laws have to be passed by Congress. If Congress doesn't like it, if they feel like the executive branch has grown too much in power, they could fix it. They could pass laws themselves. But realistically, it's probably asking too much. What do I want you to take away from this? Agencies have the power to make rules that are like laws. It's made the executive branch grow over time. Agencies hire experts who know this stuff. Kind of like remember we learned lobbyists are experts? Well, so are government workers. They're experts too. I'm not qualified to work for Federal Aviation Administration. So your summary is, explain how the bureaucracy has grown over time due to Congress. I'm going to pause the video. I'm back. We did our summary. And I was mentioning that every department, every agency, they were all created by Congress. And if they complain today, if they don't like something like the Department of Education, it's really up to Congress to abolish it. It's not up to the president. Okay, let me press this. Okay, and then I have this whole other slide about, so this one was they can make rules, and this one is they can make judgments too. So like, let me tell you a story that might make a little bit of sense. Wells Fargo is a bank. Anybody use Wells Fargo? They got in some trouble years ago because they were telling their employees, we're going to give you a bonus for however many, like open up as many accounts as you can for, let's say, you know, Daniel comes in, I want to open an account with Wells Fargo, and they say, okay, cool. And they try to pressure him, want to open up 2, 3 accounts, maybe you need a checking, maybe you need a savings, how about a money market account? They were giving their employees bonuses for opening accounts. So far, so good. There's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Go for it. But the problem was when Daniel was leaving, the employees were like, I want more money. And they would open up like 10 more accounts under Daniel's name so that they could get more bonuses. And they were doing it for like every customer. So a whole bunch of customers would log in and be like, why do I have like 8 accounts? Like, I only signed up for 1. The government found out about this, the Federal Trade Commission, and they fined Wells Fargo like $4 billion or something. The government got to decide the number. Wells Fargo could sue and like try to fight the number, but the point is Wells Fargo, or the government had quasi-judicial power. Like they made a judgment. You owe us $4 billion because you messed up. And actually, you guys don't get the money. The government will collect it as like a penalty. Okay. Another famous example is, this gets confusing because you guys don't even watch like local TV very much. You watch HBO and you watch, you know, Hulu and stuff, and you see F words and nudity and whatever. But on local TV, like on the radio stations in your car, and on local television, where like channels 2, 4, or 5, they are not allowed to have profanity and nudity. And there was a famous moment, you guys were not born, I don't think, during the Super Bowl, right before you were born. There was a famous moment where Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson, who knows this story, they were doing the halftime show. Nobody knows this story. That's wild. You're probably going to go home and look it up. But they were doing their halftime show, and there was a moment that called for him, I don't know, I guess, it called for him to reach over in the choreography and pull down her, she had kind of a lingerie top, and he pulled it down. Now, I think there was supposed to be like fabric that stayed and fabric that got pulled down, but the whole thing got pulled down on live television. Luckily, I guess, she had like a metal pasty over her nipple, but the point is, like, nudity happened on like the most watched thing that happens in America, the Super Bowl, and the government fined CBS $500,000, like, hey, you messed up, you know, you showed nudity to every house in America. That's actually not that much of a fine. It's not that big of a deal. But the point is, these agencies have quasi-judicial power. Fun fact, Justin Timberlake recovered just fine from that, and he still stayed a big star. Janet Jackson, she was like, this is kind of sexism. Her career kind of like fizzled out a little bit. People blamed her, like, oh, she did it on purpose and stuff. But I think it was that the fabric got all grabbed instead of partially grabbed. Are you looking it up? Is there a metal pasty? Fun fact, this is around this time, I'm going to say it was around, do you have a year? I'm going to say it's like 2002 or something, I don't know. 2004. So this is when this, like, I was alive, I was your age-ish, a little bit older when this happened, and we were so excited, we had finally got the technology to rewind live television. It was called TiVo. You probably never heard TiVo, but like, TiVo was like a game changer, man. Like, your signal went through this hard drive and you recorded everything you watched and you could rewind it, and everyone had TiVo, and it was magical, and it worked well. It was almost like an Apple type, like, wonderful device. It was the most rewound moment in TiVo history. Well, okay, I shouldn't say. All right. There you go. Okay. You see how today's lecture is just kind of this, like 100 facts that are all over the place. Now we have to go back to our buckets. Remember, there are 3 buckets to put agencies in, and I only told you 2. Bucket number 3 is government corporations. And a government corporation it feels like a business, like they provide a service. So the post office. Raise your hand if you've been to the post office before, okay? When you go in there, like, you're buying for them to do something for you, right? The government's providing a service. Or remember the Tennessee Valley Authority brought power to the South? People that pay their power bill, they're buying a government service. One that I never even realized this is owned by the government, but Amtrak Trains. Amtrak Trains is a government corporation. It's run by the government. It's not like Southwest Airlines, which is a private business. So now you have the 3 buckets. One is independent executive agencies like NASA. One is independent regulatory agencies, and that's like the Food and Drug Administration. And one is government corporations. That's like the Postal Service. We're going to pause our notes and take out that agency paper, and you're going to fill in that column with your best guess about what each agency is, what type that it is. Nobody should get it wrong if I had it on the notes. So, like, I think I gave you like 10 answers. So don't get those 10 answers wrong. You can use pencil if you want. I'm going to pause the video. Let's see this. So I'm going to go over the answers with you. I think the CIA is independent executive. I think environmental is regulatory. I think the FBI is independent executive. I think the FCC is regulatory. I think the Federal Reserve Board is regulatory. I think the Federal Trade Commission is regulatory. I think emergency management is independent executive. You can't regulate a natural disaster. Food and drug is regulatory. I think general services is independent executive. I think government accountability, this one's harder. I haven't even Googled it. I'm just going to say I think it's independent executive. NASA, independent executive. We know that for sure. National Archives, independent executive. The NSA, independent executive. Nuclear regulatory, it's right in the word, so it's regulatory. Occupational safety, regulatory, regulating your workplace. The Office of Personnel Management, I think, is independent executive. Securities and Exchange Commission, I think, is regulatory. Small Business Association, I think, is independent executive. Social Security Administration is independent executive. And the last 2 are government corporations. Okay, we return. Oh, we're going to skip that. Okay, now we're in the next section of our notes, and I can go through this a little faster pace than what we've been doing so far. Okay? And growth of the bureaucracy. Boop. When the government is asked to do something and somebody has to do it, it's the bureaucracy. Okay? When the government is asked, keep our airplanes safe, it's the bureaucracy that has to do it. Or keep our water safe, or keep our banks safe. But 200 years ago, the way things used to be was pretty messed up. The way things used to be is that the president would just fire everybody. We're talking about tens of thousands of workers, and they would hire all their buddies. You might say, I don't have 10,000 buddies. Well, they would hire anybody who helped them get elected. We called this, it's pretty corrupt. It's a pretty corrupt system. So if you think America's corrupt today, it was really corrupt like 200 years ago. We don't do this anymore. We make people pass a test. We call this system of corruption the spoil system. You might be familiar with the term, to the victor go the spoils. Like, to the person who won goes the good stuff. So I won, so I'm going to fire everybody and hire my friends. We finally changed that. There was an assassination. Do you need this? There was an assassination where somebody came and asked the president for a job, and he's like, I don't know you. The answer's no, and the guy shot him. I forget which president. I want to say Garfield, but I'm not positive. Hey, APO students, do you know the answer to the question? You already lost all that information in 6 months? So we decided to pass a law, and it almost feels like I have a slide missing. So maybe in the margin of your paper, the law that we passed was called the Pendleton Act. or we also call it the Civil Service Act, that said we're going to hire people based on passing a test now. Like, you got to pass a test, and you're not all going to get fired all the time. And that will make for a much more efficient government. Imagine if all the teachers and all the assistant principals got fired and rehired every time we had a principal change, you know? That would like not lead to a very good school. So now what we have is better. You got to pass a test, you got to earn it. We call it merit-based. If you don't know what that means, write it down. Merit-based, it means you earn it based on your merit. Today there's about 3 million civilian federal employees. Okay? Oh, again, it feels like something is missing here, so I'm going to use my hands to describe it. I guess I could use the board. Imagine a line graph where like it was like 1900 to today, and the line represents jobs, or federal jobs, and it's like the line goes like this. Oh, it's rising, you know, the executive branch, we're making new agencies. And then all of a sudden around like maybe like 1980 or something, it starts to level off and it doesn't rise anymore. And you might ask, well, why is that? That seems weird. The government's bigger than ever. The answer to why that is that there's a test question with this graph, okay? So I'm walking you through it. The answer to why that is that a lot of responsibilities have been put on the states, like, hey, the federal government wants to run a food stamp program for poor people who need to eat. And then they ran it, they're like doing it, the states are complaining, we'd rather like you just give us the money and we could run the food stamp program. So they're like, all right, we will. And so they give the states the money and they say, you run the food stamp program. And so a lot of jobs have shifted to the states, like you do it. If you want to complain about our food stamp program, you do it. And this next slide is kind of explaining that. And in this slide it says 1950, so maybe I'll change 1980 to 1950. And the food stamp program is a great example. California gets money and they run their own food stamp program. So does Arizona, so does Minnesota. Some states are meaner about giving out food stamps and some states are nicer about giving out food stamps. Probably use this video in the future, so let's capture class of 2025. 2025, there they are in all their glory. And the TA Dom, there he is, entering the room at the weirdest time. Alright, cool. This lecture's so hard, maybe I'll just show the video for the rest of my life instead of doing it in class. Do you learn from the video as well as you do from in class? Oh, you do? Excellent. Not if you watch it on mute, though, so don't watch it on mute. Okay? Alright, the next couple slides are kind of important. So, you remember whenever I said, like, they tell the airlines, like, or they tell the Federal Aviation, like, make our airplanes safe, and then they do that? Well, that is what discretionary authority means. Discretionary authority means that these federal agencies have the power to make, like, rules and laws based on really broadly worded Congress laws. So let me explain. Congress passes a law that's like, hey, we're going to create the Federal Aviation Department in the executive branch, and we want you to keep airplanes safe. That's a very broadly worded law. And so it's up to the executive branch to interpret that and be like, okay, how are we going to keep airplanes safe? It's very much open to interpretation. Trump might have a very different interpretation of that than Biden does. Okay? This is a word you need to know. I don't remember if it's vocab, but discretionary authority is definitely on our test, definitely on our FRQs. and it's the ability of these agencies. Discretion means options. Authority means power. The power of having options. The power of having options. To interpret Congress's really broadly worded laws. If Mr. Albitri was here, he'd be dying on today's lecture, let me tell you. Okay. Hey, here we go. This is like some of my examples. So they have the power to pass rules and regulations like airport security. Like you have to wear certain shoes if you work at Wingstop and Pizza Hut. Like tax code regulations. In other words, guys, we have not passed laws about like what shoes you wear to work. We have not passed laws about taking your shoes off at the airport. And yet we have to do it. And if you don't do it, you're breaking the law, because the government agencies have the power of sort of making their own rules. And those rules have the force of law. In your lifetime, I guarantee you, we will stop taking our shoes off at the airport. And it won't be because of a law. We'll just say, I don't think we need to do it anymore. In fact, I have flown, and sometimes they don't make me take off my shoes, and sometimes they do make me, and I'm like, and then they yell at you like you should know. Keep your shoes on! You know, have you ever been through TSA? It sucks. It's so stressful. I'm like so nervous. Take your laptop out of the bag! And then you go to a new airport. Keep your laptop! Why are you taking it out? And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Anyway, the point is they kind of get to decide the rules. They have the power to do that. Right here, have you been yelled at the airport security? You got stressed out. Yeah. It's a stressful situation. And then I travel to Europe with students, and so imagine going through like with 30 kids. It's like so stressful. There's no worse day than the 2 airport days, because you know kids don't know like to take out their laptop, to take off their shoes, and then you did it in one place and the next place doesn't want you to do it. Okay, what else do? Remember how lobbyists help Congress? Well, so do government employees. These are experts, and they help Congress pass laws, they give advice to the president, and they settle disputes. I think, oh no, we're not there yet. So the question here, I would say the slide is important. Why has the bureaucracy grown so much? I'm going to give you a whole bunch of reasons. Like, why has it grown so much from when our country started? Well, we have way more people in our country. You have more people, you're probably going to have more government workers. What else? America has become much more complicated with the invention of new technology. Like, we need something to regulate trains, something to regulate planes, something to regulate pollution, something to regulate the internet. Anytime we have a crisis, the government tends to grow. Like, we created the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11. So we had a crisis, and the government grew forever. Can we get rid of these things, guys? Yes, but it would take an act of Congress. Americans today, they expect the federal government to help them when they're in trouble. That's not the way Americans thought when Washington was president. When Washington was president, they only really thought of their state governments. They rarely looked to the federal government for help. And then letter E is like what I said. Once something is created, it typically survives forever. A kid asked me yesterday, have we ever gotten rid of anything? Yes, we have. We have gotten rid of stuff, but it's like 1% compared to 99% that sticks around. We're much more likely to make something than to get rid of something. All right. Boop. We're finally at the last section here of our notes, 5.112, I think. And okay, you know what? You can change this. I kind of want to change it now. You can say 99%. 99% of bureaucrats are appointed by passing some kind of test. They prove that they were qualified. I'm a government worker, and I had to pass a test that shows that I know history. 3 different tests, actually. And then you get bonus points if you're a veteran, or a minority, or a woman. Except Trump took that away. So you can cross off race and gender if you want to. But I'm leaving it on my notes, because the next president will probably bring it back. This is the nature of the times we live in. Boop. I believe in teaching in the best I can in an unbiased way, and I want to point out that Trump, he is sort of right in a way that government workers can be lazy, government Lakers. I've got my mind on the Lakers right now. They can be like if you had a job and you were paid well and you had health insurance and everything, and you were never going to get a bonus, and there was a paper that said how much money you'll make next year and the year after that, and you knew that you could probably never get fired. Would you try as hard? Would you put in your best effort every day if you knew you could not be fired? That's the conundrum of government workers. Look at, in last year, only 400 got fired out of 3 million. So you're basically not going to get fired. You'd have to like light the building on fire to get fired. So the point is, perhaps it is true that the government is inefficient because people don't try super hard, and the government workers are like less responsive to the people because I'll give you an example. What's a better customer service experience? The DMV or Chick-fil-A? Chick-fil-A, yeah? Which one of those is based on profit? Chick-fil-A is. If you're a bad worker at Chick-fil-A, they'll fire you. I have students and they say, I got written up because I didn't say my pleasure at Chick-fil-A. At the DMV, do they say my pleasure? Do they seem like there's urgency to help you? Every time I go to the DMV, it's like utter chaos. Kids are running around. I've been there when a guy pissed his pants. Like, it's crazy. The DMV is like, people are hanging off the ceiling. It's utter chaos. And then Susie at window 8 is like, next. It's as if like totally unaffected. But I've had jobs. I've worked at a pharmacy. I worked at Pizza Hut. I worked at Blockbuster Video. When the line got long, we worked harder. You know what I mean? Like we were like, oh my God, we gotta go. All right, next in line. Let me help you out. I'm sorry you had to wait today. But when you work at the DMV, why would I work any harder? Like, I'm gonna get paid the same. I'm not gonna get fired. Yeah, that's chaos, but like I'm zen up here, like woo, you know. And so the point is, it is true, I think, that the government workers are less efficient. Even teachers, like between me and you, no one's going to see this recording, but like teachers, they know they can't get fired, how it would be really difficult to get fired. And so you have a very different quality. You have teachers that try really hard and they put a bunch of effort, and then you have other teachers that are like, hey, maybe we'll watch a movie today, or here's a crossword puzzle. That seems like a 2-hour activity. You know what I mean? And so this is the conundrum of government workers, because they kind of know they're not going to get fired. So like I kind of get it. I don't necessarily agree, but I kind of get it when Trump is like, Chick-fil-A should run Social Security. It's like, yeah, I understand what you mean, but like it probably wouldn't work, but I understand what you mean. The truth is somewhere in between. I want government workers who are protected, but we could pay them bonuses based on like trying harder, and like we could try to motivate. I don't know. Maybe we could fire more people. I think with teachers we can fire more people. Like mix it up. All right, yeah, I'm writing you up. You're late again. You showed a movie again. Like too many movies. This is your 10th movie this year. That's too much. What these notes are saying is that the people that work in the government are typically loyal to their agency. They typically continue the behavior that was done 20 years ago. Like, there's not a lot of innovation in government. There's tons of innovation at Chick-fil-A. When they first came here, I was in high school. Chick-fil-A wasn't always here. They came from the East Coast, from like Georgia. They came here when I was in high school, and they took your order, whatever. But I've seen them get the iPads. I've seen them get out there. I've seen them during COVID alter how they order. I've seen In-N-Out Burger didn't ever used to have a guy with a tablet. It was during COVID where they added that, and now he's just there all the time. That's innovation to make things move quicker. Do you see the government innovating? Not too much. The DMV only just recently added online appointments. Like, that's not a thing that was around 5 years ago, and the DMV sucks. By the way, never use the DMV on an FRQ. Why? It's not run by the federal government. Okay, it's the state of California, but it's a good example of government workers. Okay, boop. Also, you need to know that bureaucrats are experts in their fields. And this whole slide just says that the bureaucracy looks like us. The bureaucracy looks like us. Racially, ethnically, genderly, the bureaucracy looks like us. Raise your hand if you're white. Here we are. This is us. 2 or 3 of us. The point is, we have a very diverse classroom, yes? If you went and looked at a government office, it would be similarly diverse if it was in California. But if you look at the very top, if you look at the cabinet secretaries and the leaders of NASA, do they look like us? Well, if us is me, maybe, but they look like older white dudes, right? So just, the point is, the top of our government's still pretty, elite white rich dudes, lawyers, or whatever. But then underneath, all the workers, they match the American people. That's the point of this slide. There's a test question about that. Boop. This slide is basically saying, I hope you know that not all federal workers are in Washington, D.C. In fact, in Corona, there's a Social Security office. In Corona, there's a Medicare office. You need to know, if I show you a graph of workers in the country, probably more than half are not in Washington, D.C. They're somewhere else. You'll get a test question wrong if you think they're all in Washington, D.C. They are not. Do you guys know what a white-collar worker is? A white-collar worker, so it says most of them are white-collar workers. That's literally like the collar on your shirt. White-collar means they're like business workers. Like, they sit behind a desk in a cubicle. Blue collar is like you're going to get your shirt dirty, you're a mechanic, you're a plumber. Pink collar is healthcare. I just learned that. All right. Boop. We're so close. Couple things on here worth talking about. The Hatch Act. The Hatch Act says that if, let's say that I work in Corona at the Medicare office, I can't have a sticker on my cubicle that's like, Make America Great Again, or Vote for Harris. No politics are allowed in a government workplace. Even me as a teacher, I cannot have a sticker that says, vote for Trump, vote for Harris. I'm not allowed to do that. I'm not supposed to be trying to influence the way you guys feel. And so I try my best. Especially with elections, I try my best. After the election's over, you might be able to figure it out. But this right here is the Freedom of Information Act. Because I work for the government, you have a right to know answers to your questions. You can go down to the Corona Norco School District and say, how much did the STEM building cost? And they have to print out a report and show you. You can say, how much do they spend on toilet paper at STEM? And they have to show you. They can say, I want to see every email from every teacher in the district that says transgender or racist. And the district will print it out and give it to them. Like emails that I sent. It's all transparent because I work for the government and we're not allowed to have any secrets unless it's like classified information. So it's quite scandalous. We'll have parents go down and they'll pull requests. Exactly what I said. I want to see every email that says transgender. Because they want to know, are we like encouraging kids to become transgender? You know what I mean, like the type of parent, right? And that's perfectly okay. They're allowed to do that because of the Freedom of Information Act. That's not just about schools, that's about anything. You can go ask the Medicare office, how much did you spend on office equipment? They have to answer the question. They have to give you the paperwork. This is where news reporters get a lot of like juicy information, is they're like, we happened to ask the right question and we found a scandal. And that can be kind of fun. Okay. It's the last slide. This is kind of repeating some of the stuff that I said. Government workers don't get bonuses, so maybe they're less excited to work harder. Government agencies are so big that they don't have big, bold ideas because it's too hard to like change the machine. And then there's a vocab word called red tape. Raise your hand if you filled out your FAFSA or you're in the middle of filling out your FAFSA. Was it complicated at all? No. No, not too bad. So then I won't use it as an example, but like, do you ever deal with the government and it's quite complicated and you're not sure like what to do? I'll give you, this is like forever going to be recorded on video, but my son, my firstborn son, don't tell him. I haven't told him. But his middle name is my wife's maiden name. That's fine. That's not the secret. Nolan Getton Robinson. But we filled out the birth certificate, Nolan Getton. It's a weird middle name. It's a weird maiden name. And so it's kind of cool. I like to preserve it. Like it's dead. She doesn't have any brothers or anything. The name is gone. Well, they misread what we put, and they put Nolan Getter Robinson. And I'm like, how do I fix this? And the answer was very complicated because it's like birth certificate is one building, Social Security is another building. You got to get permission. You need to like prove that it was a mistake on their end, not on your end. That is red tape. The idea that, like, I don't know what to do because the government is so large and there's all these form 507C. Well, did you get it notarized? Where's this? And you're like, I don't know. So the point is, that is red tape, the things that stand in the way of fixing things. His name is still Nolan Getter Robinson. Is that bad? Am I a terrible person? Okay. All right, that's the end of the recording. Have a lovely day. Do the summary.